too much into the time an hour. So we're going to get started. Thanks again for joining us today. As I'm sure you know if you've turned up, what we're going to be talking about is specifically live event workflows and how Blackbird and Imagen have worked together on a specific use case. We're going to talk generally today. We're also going to talk into the specifics of this project and this customer. Unfortunately, we're not going to reveal who it is, but you can enjoy the suspense and let your imagination run wild while we talk about that today. I'm joined today by Kirsten Lincoln, Senior Account Manager at Imagen. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thanks for joining me. And if you don't know me already, I'm Oliver Parker. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Blackbird. Before we get started, just a quick point of housekeeping. You'll see at the bottom of your screen the Q&A button. Please feel free to use it. We may pick up questions as we go, but we'll try our hardest to make sure we've got a bit of time at the end just to answer some of those questions as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk about a specific use case today, but before we do that, for anyone on the call who essentially doesn't know that much about Blackbird or Imagen, we're just going to give you a couple of brief introductions there. So I'll kick that off and talk about Blackbird for a couple of minutes. So Blackbird is a unique, and as it says here, patented cloud video editing platform. Essentially what we do is we change what people can do with video content in a browser environment. So for our customers, that can be file-based workflows, live-based workflows, building on top of on-prem or cloud infrastructure. It doesn't really matter. The idea is that they have the tools they need to create content in a professional manner in a browser interface that brings lots and lots of value and benefits with it. I mentioned a few different workflows there. We work with sports teams, federations, we're talking about today, broadcasters, service providers, news, sports, all sorts of different workflows. There's a few key benefits really that kind of spread across all of those customers and use cases. One key one is around speed. Certainly that's a big part of what we're discussing today. So whether it's live or not, for most of our workflows today, getting content out to the viewers in a timely fashion is pretty important. Blackbird not only has fast live input through to publish workflows, but also we try and build the platform itself so that it's very quick and easy for users to create content, whether it's simple or complex, push that out. And the other key one really here in terms of workflow is flexibility. So I mentioned before, not just about flexibility for types of infrastructure, the types of content, but also obviously flexibility to have teams working anywhere. This comes part and parcel of working with a native browser-based solution. And underneath both of this, is reinforced all of those efficiencies lead to massively reduced infrastructure costs and also obviously efficiencies that go towards better sustainability within those workflows as well. Kirsten, I'll hand over to you, give you a chance just to introduce a little bit about Imagen.
Thank you. So Imagen is an intelligent cloud-based media asset platform. It provides a centralized and cost-effective way to manage, market, and securely deliver large volumes of high-resolution video content. Many of our clients include Tier 1 federations like the English Premier League, International Tennis Federation, Cricket New Zealand, and IMG Replay. With Imagen, you can manage content easily, find your footage fast, get it out to stakeholders globally with ease, and our unique features is our infinitely configurable access control levels. This means that you can keep your content and your rights secure and only accessed and found by those with the right permissions.
So I think that access control and management of large volumes of content is particularly relevant to the use case we're talking about today as well. And so from the Blackbird side, if we get stuck into this specifics, I'll go into some of the features and some of the really important bits. But let's get an overview first of the use case here. So we're talking about a joint customer that have been using Blackbird and Imagen in coordination for a little while now. And it's, as I said, we're not allowed to reveal the name, but it's a large sports federation. They host a global event every 4 years or so, so that narrows it down a little bit. And Kirsten, give us a bit of an intro as to what they were looking for and what some of the key requirements were about how they handled content around this massive event.
Yes, so as you mentioned, the customer hosts a global event, and in planning for this, they wanted to create an ultimate digital fan experience. So they developed their own OTT app and website. There's a strong trend towards sports organizations creating these direct-to-consumer apps and streaming channels in order to deepen their relationship with fans before, during, and after the live games.
So, it is a familiar challenge. I think we've seen small and large federations across the world starting to, or not starting, but thoroughly along the road to direct to consumer and looking at multiple platform deliveries and so on. Let us know a little bit about some of the particular challenge in this case.
Mm-hmm. So the client wanted the app to be the source of all their highlights, news reels, background content, interviews, and documentaries. So the main challenge around the event that they had for both Imagen and Blackbird was how to make edited highlight packages and news content from live games available in the app within 1 hour of the end of each live match. This solution was provided in a number of ways. So Imagen provided an media asset management platform, and this was the central source of content for the OTT app. Its job was to power the content production and distribution process. We also configured workflows within the platform to enable the ingestion, the storage, the editing, the management, and the distribution of the highlight packages, along with Blackbird. So we worked on integrating the two services together so we could meet this goal.
So it did, just to dig into that a little bit. Obviously, as I mentioned before, there's a particularly large amount of content here. I think one of the things we see people assume maybe when we start to talk about OTT and app platforms from federations and so on, is that the majority of the additional content that starts to be created is fairly simple, bite-sized, like social and so on. And of course, that's very important. And certainly, again, I think it's assumed that when we look at really fast turnaround of content, that's primarily going to be snackable stuff that goes out to social. What you were just talking about, Kirsten, was about, not necessarily simple content. So these are full highlights packages and other pieces of media, but in, what did you say, an hour from the game?
Yes. So with social, it tends to be the quick turnaround within a few seconds. This was editing content, so it was a number of minutes. So for the editorial team would have to take a long piece of content, choose the key features, edit it in such a quick turnaround, but also process that content through the channels between Imagen, Blackbird, and the OTT platform within that time as well. So this is moving large files around the different platforms to reach the end the OTT platform.
So there's a lot of moving parts there.
Yes.
For the Imagen side of it, and lots of moving parts where obviously speed is a critical factor. That's really interesting. So we're going to have a look at the overview of this, but I'm just going to, for the Blackbird side, I'm going to share a little bit of detail on what they were looking for from the content creation side of things. So essentially, we are the access point, right? We're where the users are going to go to create and edit that content, but we're sat on top of this, the content management, asset management platform that Imagen is providing underneath. So for us, there are a couple of key aspects here. One was around global access. So this is not one team sat in one place. There were multiple teams actually all around on the other side of the world for this. So solid accessible remote access, and therefore browser-based editor was key. Integration into the Imagen system, absolutely critical. I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail as we go through. Fast access, again, the speed point, fast publishing, and ease of adoption. So I think this is another theme we see across all sorts of projects where we're looking at non-traditional broadcast federations and content rights holders getting into their own platform deliveries, is allowing different types of users to have access to that. The key thing, and a really interesting thing for us actually after the delivery of this, was to look at the types of features that they're using within the editor as well. So obviously, when we're talking about these points, it's about workflow and architecture. But for us, we saw regular use of pretty advanced features within this. So these are not a list of features Blackbird supports, otherwise the font would be a bit smaller. But these are the list of features that are used, every day within this content creation. Multiple video and audio tracks with effects laid on those, real-time blur effects, titling, transitions, and so on, even down to tweaking, color correction and so on, slowing down and speeding up. So as we said before, this is not about quick and dirty content. It's curated, crafted highlights packages and longer form content that's being created in this workflow. Okay, so this is a pretty high level overview, gives us a bit of a picture about what's coming in, what's happening, and what's going out. Kirsten, I'll throw over to you to go from the start of this process, talk us through, what's happening here.
No problem at all. Thank you, Ollie. So this is, as you mentioned, a high-level overview of the workflow that we had in place. The first column shows the content that was ingested into the Imagen asset management platform. It was designed to be the engine room for the automatic workflow that was needed to process, edit, and push the live content that was created to the app. So you can see the various channels that we received the content into the Imagen platform, and this also includes the content feed from the live matches. The second column is the content management. So this is the usage within the Imagen platform. The content management column shows how the video asset is then enriched, annotated, and has the metadata added to enable the content to be found easily for the editors working within the platform. Also at this point, the strict asset control and user permissions are also automatically applied to the content to mean that only the right people can see the right content.
So looking at this at face value, I think that it looks to me like kind of a simplification of the user experience is probably key for what Imagen's delivering here. You've got lots of different content coming from lots of different places. It's how do people navigate that?
Yes. That's correct. So the main user will sit within the content management column, where the content will automatically ingest into the Imagen platform, and then you'll automatically have the content reaching Blackbird, and then also the content delivery stage as well. So the different columns have the different action points, but the main user experience will be in the content management column.
Yeah, I think that's an important point as well for this type of use case, because in traditional media companies or broadcast media companies, you might find that there's actual distinct teams of people that would work around the live production side of it or the digital side of it, and there might be an engineering team handling content movement and uploads and things like that. Whereas when we're working with federations and other types of businesses, so that legacy teams and infrastructure doesn't necessarily exist. So enabling all of that to still happen in the background, but presenting it in a way that allows an efficient workflow for users is really important. But for the Blackbird piece of this, obviously fairly simple diagram from our side, but essentially the key thing for us again was seamless user experience. So Blackbird, as I mentioned before, can sit on top of lots of different types of infrastructure and storage and so on, and allow access to live streams or file storage and that kind of thing as a standalone product. But when we're working with content management or asset management systems, as we are with Imagen here, the important thing for us is to kind of remove some of the steps and remove some of the things that make it obvious that there's multiple different things at play here. So, for example, API integrations that allow an on-demand ingest or access to media for editing is really critical. We could look at everything all the time and make everything editable. It's not going to be particularly efficient when we get into really high volumes of content. So using APIs to manage media ingest. Also, there's the potential to have full user authentication APIs, metadata back and forth, and a variety of touch points that essentially mean for the user, everything that they need is there when they need it, whether they're in the Imagen system or whether they're taking that through to the editor as well. And then we're on to delivery. Kirsten, that's back to you for that bit.
Yes, so for the content delivery, the final column, so in this particular workflow instance, this is the final steps. So this is when Imagen will receive the return content from Blackbird and push it out to the final destination. This could be the OTT app, it could be a client website, and also in this case, the archive, which is also a Imagen managed service. And that in this instance, that whole workflow is automated.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've given everybody on the call 15 minutes of PowerPoint, so we're going to stop that and we're going to share our screens and run through just a quick demonstration so you can see actually what the user interfaces look like and the kind of process in a fairly brief format, because we only have a relatively short amount of time. But Kirsten's going to start, share her screen here and show us what this looks like for the user from the Imagen side.
No problem. And just check you can all see my screen.
I can. Take that as a yes.
Thank you. So this is the Imagen Sports Federation archive. It's a demo site that we have created. Now this has been put together to show you what a typical Imagen platform looks like. Every client site is fully branded to reflect their look and feel. So a typical user would have access to the platform via a login. By clicking on the search screen, they are presented with a grid of all the content that they have access to based on their permissions. The content will have metadata applied, so they can search for content using the schema as a search term within the search within the top. There's also the possibility to filter and sort content with the filters on the left-hand side. Now, the content can enter Imagen in a number of ways. It can be automatically ingested, or we can manually create a record. This is an example of where we normally enter some metadata. You can configure permissions. So there are a number of groups that can have their permissions changed based on what you want people to see. You can add content manually in a number of ways. So you can add a file from your local device, from a Dropbox, OneDrive, a URL, a social post. And we've also have the functionality to add a live SRT stream to a Imagen record. So if I open an example record, one moment. So here is a typical Imagen record. When the content is ingested, you can see the video content. The video proxy can be scrubbed. You see the metadata that you've entered on the left-hand side. There are a number of action points that you can do from this location, this drop-down menu. You can download the content, and download profiles are configured based on users. So they can download the original video or the HLS video. You can also edit the metadata. And you can then edit maybe what you've written before or edit permissions. And once integrations such as the Blackbird integration are in place, you are able to run this via a workflow. So once a user has decided which video they want to be edited, they need to go to a run workflow. So all the workflow and the integration points are configured in the back end of the system. A user would simply be sent to this, need to go to the run workflow location. Here they can choose from multiple workflows that have been configured, from publish to OTT, social media sites. But in this particular example, we click send to Blackbird, click run workflow, and this will send the original video file to Blackbird. There is also the option as well to send clips. So rather than sending the full video file, you can add clips either to a collection, or you can download them for order. And the clips can be from a file, or they can also be from a live SRT stream as well. So you can clip on demand. And again, it's a case of running a workflow and then sending the clips to Blackbird as well. So for a user, you click the run workflow, everything will work in the background to trigger the transfer of the file. And then that file will then appear within Blackbird. So Oliver, I'll send this over to you. I'll stop sharing, and then you'll be able to show the next stages in the workflow.
Excellent. I'm back. So yes, so if you're a user on the Blackbird side, you can go to the website and log in and access your accounts from anywhere in the world, obviously, just in the standard Chrome browser here. But as I mentioned before, there's also the potential to actually open the browser and log the person in the background so that there's a seamless authentication through. And obviously, I've got a variety of content here. I can come in and search custom metadata again to find it if I want. Or as you see here, we've actually got Kirsten's own folder. So there's ways of setting up the system to basically place or make content available in the right place at the right time, according to those user buckets or whatever they want them to do. And obviously, one of the key things about Blackbird is instant access. So I have immediate instant access to this file. Full frame jog and shuttle movement through without any buffering latency or anything that normally comes with workflows where you might be moving files around in the background or streaming to people. We're not doing that. This is where our unique tech comes in to allow us to serve frames and frame accurate media to users immediately. So again, everything we do is with an eye to speeding up that process. Now, in terms of the content creation, I'm in a very simple layout right here. We have a variety of ways that platform can be used. So I can come and mark an out, make a short clip, drag and drop, and publish that out. We've got multiple published destinations here. It's completely open. If you wanted, you could just have one, which is going to send it back to Imagen. But obviously, we also do direct social publishing and so on if needed. I'm going to move through here and have a look at a different layout. So this is still very simple, but instead of making a single clip, I can just start to create a bit of a sequence of content here. So I can move forward and grab a different section of this and just create a shot box view. So again, fairly straightforward. It's easy for me to see this clip here, view it, edit it, and publish it out. And I'll do that now. I'll just save this off. We'll call this sequence. Okay, I don't have to save it actually before I publish. I can publish straight from my source, or I can publish straight from my timeline, but I'm going to drag that to the center image in the box. Now, in this particular workflow, we actually have some metadata that needs to go with it. This doesn't have to happen, but this is essentially to make sure that that asset management platform that Imagen is providing to the customer here has everything it needs to make this content usable, but also potentially to automate publish workflows. So, Kirsten, I know any of the metadata in here can be valuable to users, but this can also trigger workflows automatically. Is that right?
That's correct. So when it arrives in Imagen, if you set metadata in advance, we can then trigger workflows for next steps once it's reached our platform.
Yeah. And we're also, you can see here, even defining the types of audio publish that we're going to do and all sorts of things. So this can really be as complex or as simple as we need that to be. If I pop this open, you'll see that's going off, it's pressing, it's going to publish that file as we go. Now, we also have customizable log views within Blackbird, and beyond the simple clipping, we have a full web editor. I'm going to save a little bit of time here and just pull up an example. So you can see actually, as well as fast turnaround on the simple side, we can have multiple, up to 18 video tracks, 36 audio tracks, content within Blackbird, of editing within Blackbird. This includes alpha overlays, scale and position control of assets. You can see here, actually, if I burst this open, we've got basic color correction, white level, black hue, saturation control, transform effects, and things like cropping, multiple different blurs, highlights, and so on. And everything we do, whether it's video transitions, audio and video offsets, all of it is rendered in real time by my actual browser. Okay, so there's no going back to servers for previews, there's no waiting for rendering, anything. And we looked at these features before: color correction, blurring, transform controls, audio, fan and level control, overlays, all of this stuff is real-time rendered inside my actual browser session here. So again, it goes towards presenting an accessible, easy interface for users that allows you to access and create content fast, but you still have all of those professional features at your fingertips as well. So again, if you're happy with this, all you do is you drag and you drop that across. Let's drag, drop, and I can publish that straight back. So Kirsten, let's pop back to you and just finish off with a quick look at the publishing side of that workflow.
No problem. Just share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So back to the search grid on the Imagen platform. As you can see, the first video content that is available is the BB web sequence that Oliver's just created. So if I click on the record, this will open and is exactly the same format as the original record. The metadata is also available that was added in the Blackbird suite as well, so that here you'll be able to see the content. What you can do within Imagen is you can have different permissions on the edited content as well as the original content if there is different end audience that need to see the information. As Oliver mentioned, you can, upon ingest, trigger the workflow for the next stages. So for example, to go to the OTT platform, you can also run a manual workflow, and for a user, the steps would be exactly the same. Click run workflow, publish to OTT website, and then click run. And then again, any triggers to move files and action any APIs would work in the background. So the user would have the same steps. So in a time constraint environment, a user is very familiar with what clicks are needed to reach the next steps, as opposed to having to think of different configurations. It's one record screen, the one drop-down menu, and everything's controlled either automatically or using a very simple workflow.
And if indeed any clicks are needed, because it could be fully automated if necessary.
It can be, yes.
Excellent. So we're just going to take another minute, and then we're happy to stay on to do some questions. Some people may have to go in a minute or two, but we will stick around. I think it's a very nice quote from the customer that we've got on the screen here that people can read through. But I think it's safe to say it was a reasonably successful delivery on the event. Kirsten, is that right?
That's correct. It was a very, very successful event for both Imagen and Blackbird. The feedback that we got from the clients was it's the most stable system that they had in place during the event. The app that was used during the event is still live. It's still active in app stores and across connected TVs and devices. And the workflows that we've shown today are still in place, and all the content that is populated on their OTT platform still uses this workflow today. The client is still planning ahead for the next tournament, and we're still working together, Blackbird and Imagen, to scope and continue to grow the integration ahead of any future developments, and to work with the client as well.
Absolutely, yeah, no, it's a key point to make. Obviously, we're focusing on a big event, but this is ongoing use all the time, and actually, you know, we've also added extra capabilities since then, including direct live edit on capture into Blackbird as part of this, and so on as well. So yeah, it was, you know, great to get that kind of feedback from the customer. That's, you know, that's where you find out really whether it's all as good as we say it is. But yeah, we, you know, certainly we were happy, the customer happy. That's what makes us happy. So it was a great event to work on with the Imagen team as well from our side. So we've used the slot we've had. If people are running off to other meetings, as is often the way, we'll take the opportunity now just to say thank you very much for joining us. But we are going to stick around. We've got some questions that have come in that look quite interesting, actually. So we'll give a bit more time if you've got it, and we'll answer some of those questions. If you've got to run, then you can see some contact details up there. If you need more information on this, if you want to dig in, we'll have an individual call to learn more about this integrated workflow and how it can help you, then just get in touch either with Blackbird or Imagen on those details there. Okay, so Q&A will hopefully borrow 5 or 10 minutes more of everybody's time with Kirsten, because we've got some interesting questions here. So we'll go one that probably we both need to answer here about taking live and bringing feeds into the platform. Are they low or high res, as in, you know, how is Imagen handling live and the kind of resolutions content as it comes through there? And then I'll answer that from the Blackbird side.
So for the live streams, at the moment, I believe we're around 20 megabytes per second that are ingested. That's something that we work with clients as well to configure what their output is. Any of the content that's ingested into the Imagen system and sent to Blackbird in the current workflow that we showed is the original file. So it may be a case of, if you're ingesting a high-res file, but you know that the end destination is a low-res version, we can work for the return content to be a different format as well. So there's lots of different configurations based on client requirements that we can certainly adapt to and scale to.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, from the Blackbird side, I mean, obviously we didn't go too deep into it today, but Blackbird uses our own technology to allow us to do what we can do in the browser. That's what's special about us. But we are both reading from and publishing from original high-res, whether it's a live stream or a file. So there's no degradation of quality. There's no compromise when it comes to the output from the system from our end as well. Okay. A couple of other questions. These are. I'll ask you one for you, or maybe for both of us here. Can we create clips from a growing file from a live stream on the Imagen platform and send that to Blackbird to edit while the game is in play? That's an interesting one. I mean, it's not a workflow that I think is in place, because, as I said, actually the live edit is happening on the laptop directly into Blackbird. But I don't know on Kirsten whether you want to talk about how you handle creation or clipping or anything from live.
Yes, so from an Imagen side, that is a functionality that we're able to do. So we are able to ingest live stream as well, and then users and editors can take clips on demand, and then that can be then sent via the workflow to locations such as Blackbird. So an editor can make those decisions as the game progresses.
Okay, so there's no restriction there. You can make selections from live in Imagen, or you can actually edit on live directly in Blackbird. There's nothing that's going to slow anybody down.
No.
Good. A couple of other questions here, asking about who was doing the editing. Was it the client team? Was it broadcast partners? And a follow-up about metadata exchange. So I can answer that. The editing was client team predominantly, but as I said, there were multiple teams in different locations globally to do that. For this specific use case, we have had examples before where essentially there's a centralized repository of content like this, but multiple partners can access that within their own account structure. And just that's you know, from our side of things. So that's definitely possible, but in this side, essentially, it was the client team. I think that's right, Kirsten. I don't know if you had third parties in there.
For this example, yes, it was the same the client editing team, and it was the same team using both systems. But we do have it where we'll have third parties that may edit client content, just depending on their setup. But access can be given to the platform based on the permissions, who sees content, and then the editors may sit within the client's team or externally. It's completely dependent on their situation.
I think that's one of the beauties of essentially cloud platforms that are architected this way, right? You're not tied into people accessing physical infrastructure. It's an abstracted layer that's allowing that kind of access control. And from the metadata side, I think the answer to what metadata can be passed back and forth is essentially anything and everything you could possibly want. So yeah, via a couple of different methods, but primarily API, you can push and pull anything. So that can be asset and media metadata coming from Imagen into Blackbird. It can be asset and media metadata and publishing details, as we saw in the demo today, going back from Blackbird to the Imagen platform. And also, obviously, Blackbird has customers who use us for live logging. Anything that's logged, to answer a question, anything that's logged on the live stream and added into Blackbird can also be passed back out. Again, either through sidecar deliveries or through API functionality selection. Here's a question from somebody who's obviously got some archive content in mind. Question: does this work in both 16:9 and 4:3 aspect ratios?
So yes, it does. So from the Imagen side, any content can be ingested, iPhone portrait, any phone portrait view, 16:9, 4:3. The workflow to send this content to Blackbird is actually the same workflow. So when the files are transferred, when it reaches Blackbird, it's able to determine the ratios that are being sent and then being edited accordingly. So then when the edited video is returned to Imagen, it keeps the right formatting, so nothing is lost during the process.
Excellent. Yeah, and the same for Blackbird. We're happy with either of those types of content and many others, as that list of possible aspect ratios keeps expanding. Really easy one quickly. I'll just quickly answer here. Will this be made available as a recording? Yes, it will. So the recording of this whole session will be sent out to everybody who registered and joined us. And then won't take up too much time, but one more for you personally. Is there any limit to the amount of content or feeds? And I'll throw an extra into that, or limit to the amount of users that can be involved in this?
So the limit of content and feeds, there are no limits of the different feeds that you want to ingest into the asset management platform. It's a case of typically they're configured beforehand. We work with clients to find out exactly what needs to be ingested and how, and then to configure the output workflow as well to make sure that that if there are multiple workflows, that they are meeting the requirements and the formats. So it's certainly something that is capable. Imagen is capable of. With users, typically there isn't a limit of users. So as you mentioned, the clients can be based in lots of different locations. So they can access the same platform, they can access the same content, and there isn't typically a limit on who can access the platform at all.
Yeah, and equally from the Blackbird side, that kind of scalability is one of the major benefits with how we work and our technology. There is no limitation in terms of content or streams. But the key thing for us as well is that we hinted at, we talked about before, the users and the infrastructure are separate. So you can scale infra for stream management, things like that. That's not actually linked to how many people log in. So the key to Blackbird being a true native browser-based technology and editor is that if we've got this content available, you can have one person or 100 people or 1,000 people log in the next day. The customer doesn't have to worry about any infrastructure provision or connectivity issue or anything like that. Excellent. Okay, well, I think we've very kindly kept pretty much everybody on the session for an extra 10 minutes. So we'll leave it there. There are still 2 questions. Please do get in touch with you on the details here. We'd be more than happy to answer those remaining questions. Otherwise, we'll leave it there. To say thanks to you, Kirsten, for joining us. Really interesting session.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. And thanks to everyone for the time out of your day for joining us. We'll hope to speak to you soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you all. Bye.